uh, they their practices, their beliefs and practices are gone already. So, well, among these are the dances, the songs, the the stories, yeah, and the lifestyle. So, if you are alienated from your own culture,
Very important because culture is life. And that's why to indigenous peoples of the Philippines, land is life. That's why we have to protect their right to their ancestral domains and lands. Because their ancestral domain is their hospital, because you find their medicines there. It is their educational center because they learn from their elders, where tradition is passed down from generation to generation. No? It is the seat of government because they have their structures, political structures, no? And many others. In fact, that's why we say land is life here in the Philippines.
The crew traveled to Mindanao to see the diverse cultures of the Philippines' indigenous people. Davao is the largest city in the southeastern region of Mindanao and home to many different tribes. The NCIP Region 11 office oversees Indigenous Peoples Affairs in Davao. The office is responsible for two important tasks, which are recovering ancestral lands for the indigenous people and studying traditional cultures. Julito and Danilo are staff members of the NCIP Region 11 office, and they will go on a 3-day trip to research the culture of the Atamanobo tribe, who have submitted an application to recover their land rights. The journey to reach the Atamanobo tribal village was harder than the crew expected. Driving over unpaved roads was the easiest part of the trip. It took 2 hours to reach Mapula in a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. From here, the roads were too narrow for the trucks, so a different mode of transportation was required.
3 motorcycles. They are the drivers. 150 each.
The NCIP staff members set off again, riding on the back seats of motorcycles. After traveling for another 2 hours through dirt trails and streams, the crew arrived at Pakibato, another Atamanobo village. Now it was impossible to go any farther on a motorcycle. The only transportation option left was horses. The villagers had been expecting the NCIP staff and brought horses with them. After loading the bags and equipment on the horses, the trip continued. After crossing a stream adjacent to the village, a narrow trail appeared. Most villages are only accessible via these muddy trails, which even the horses had difficulty crossing. After traversing through valleys, thick jungles, and hilly terrain, Mount Magkaayat appeared before the crew.
This place that we are now seeing is the property of the Atamanobo. All the resources that we have seen, especially the patches of land, they're tilled by the Atamanobo, are their property. And they're applying for the certificate of ancestral domain to have security of tenure.
The NCIP staff finally arrived at Gamilak after walking for 4 hours. It took a total of 8 hours to cover 30 kilometers. 13 tribes were living together in Gamilak, an Atamanobo village. As a remote village deep in the mountains, they have limited contact with the outside world and are intrigued by the sight of outsiders. The NCIP staff explained the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act and land rights to the villagers and village chief, but there was a polite exchange of differing opinions.
Naghangyo na kasukod ka kandi na iriya o kasurbinog kapatituluan. Kung ingon ta, nagpasurbi ki, pagpasabot dayuhang kinato. Kaya sa ini sa area to ancestral, Menduming, titulado o daan kanta.
The next day, the Atamonobos tribe was very busy. They farmed the land in a peculiar way. It was interesting to see them planting seeds along the mountain slopes, and they did it by poking a hole in the ground, dropping the seed, and then covering the hole with their feet. Because they have lived here since ancient times, they know which type of crops grow well in these lands. They also thank the earth for providing them with nourishing crops.
So mes kanami na kon so unubu. Moy andi koy ren otto lutong koy ren lasut dong koy po. So barug koy kanami na yuta katawhan. Ini kana hinunan kanami panumbalik koy dito. Morumana ko ndi ka naupok masuot ni. Ato pagondio koy uli koy ren mate kanami na. Umpaan.
But before the seed planting work was over, word came that a tribal meeting was being held in the village. It seemed to be about an urgent matter. At tribal meetings, only the Datu, village chieftains, are allowed to speak. The meeting is about how to deal with an affair between Ponyong's wife, who is from a neighboring village, with Yahom. Yahom's tribe offers chikwan, aksam, and other decorative accessories to the other tribe to settle the matter.
Amoy ni uso tribal 15. Kung to dawatanod o si ini.
Do ko na agwa kay. Ag kopi ko gimatayang ko kaoto. Gimatayang ko. Ko na agpangwat sa ini. Ko na.
Si ini dak sinikot si. Si ini dak tukod.
Sika no kakudot sika.
Oh, sika kakudot sa ini.
Oh yeah.
The horse is included as part of the settlement.
Posat datu siguro na ganar ko tong
Alag
patoy.
daya sika, alag daya sulod sika.
Sika suod.
Tungod sumig sangko kay naimon tribal chieftain sa init damilag nanang kag dawat ada kay. Kay ko na kan nalibukan anak ko. Ponong anong kad oh. Sukuon tada sa ini.
The issue was amicably resolved by offering a horse and several accessories. With 13 sub-tribes living together in the area, disagreements and incidents occur now and then, but the peaceful Atamonobo tribe settles problems through tribal meetings. The incident we saw today was settled through offering a horse, but sometimes tribes will demand land, and that is why the tribes need it.
Og sablakan na at kudlo. Kalabaw. Para kono gigumari to. Barangay, kapitan, so ndot waro kindato. So sikes na andan, to natawag kinarato, og dipinsakit oto nagkapatoy.
After the tribal meeting dealt with the incident, the villagers prepared a traditional performance for the NCIP staff members who wanted to record their customs and dances. The Ban Kakao is a dance played to the music of wooden rods beaten together. It is held to thank the gods for a good harvest after the crops are harvested. The tribe dances gaily to praise the god of earth. The sayo is a song that is sung with background music played with a kulong and saluloy. which are traditional Atamanobo instruments. It is sung to welcome guests.
Sayaw, mao kini ang pag-entertain namo sa amoang mga bisita kung nay moabot, maghimo mi og sayaw aron nga malipayon ang amoang mga bisita nga modayon sa among panimalay. So mao na siya nga among ikadalit sa among mga bisita.
Oranda is a ritual for the descendants of the Atamanobo tribe and has an educational theme.
Tanan tumusulod inti lukani yu tumatang ongoni koki kahit ang kalungsod oh yay sumasinaksik sulod taramila.
Somehow, the indigenous peoples, particularly Atamanobo that we have visited now, is reminded, although they already know the culture and tradition of the Atamanobo, but then this time somehow they're reminded of this culture and tradition once again through the IPRA that I have conducted when we arrived, that is informing them and reminding them of the old culture and tradition that is protected by law through the NCIP.
Every third week of January, the Ati-Atihan Festival is held in the town of Kalibo in the Philippines. As one of the largest festivals in the country, the locals and tourists dress up as negritos and dance to traditional music. Aside from the Ati-Atihan Festival, there are many small and large festivals held across the country. A festival is held nearly every day in the Philippines, which is famous for its numerous festivals. An interesting fact about most Filipino festivals is that they are based on the traditions of indigenous people. This festival culture is another reason the Philippines needs to preserve its ancient culture.
Kailangan panatag sila sa kanilang sariling lupaing ninuno para mapanatili ang pagiging kanilang katutubong mamayan. Ang mawawala sa kanila ay yung isang buong way of life o pamamaraan ng pamumuhay kung mawala ang lupaing ninunong yon.
Mindoro is an island in the western part of the Philippines. Mindoro is close in proximity to Luzon, the main Filipino island, but it is underdeveloped. The Oriental Mindoro Tourism Bureau is in Calapan City, the state capital of Oriental Mindoro. The Tourism Bureau supports the tribal culture of the Mangyan, who are the indigenous people of Mindoro. There is a Mangyan tribal museum within the Bureau's office, and traditional Mangyan culture is promoted in local festivals as a way to protect their culture.
Ang gawain kasi namin sa tourism ay hindi lamang patungkol sa promosyon pang-turismo. Kapaloob din sa gawain namin, mahalos, ay yung pagbibigay halaga sa aming kultura. Kapaloob nito yung gawain ay iangat at ipakilala at ipalaganap ang aming rich culture.
These days, the Tourism Bureau is focusing more time and resources on the Iraya Mangyan tribe, which is a sub-Mangyan tribe. Recently, the Iraya Mangyan tribal villages around Mount Halcon have been uprooted due to land ownership controversies. The Mangyan originally lived by the coast, but when the Spanish colonial settlers took over the land, the Mangyan were forced to hide in the deep jungles around Mount Halcon. A Filipino conglomerate recently bought the land in the area, and the Iraya Mangyan tribe is being forced to leave their lands.
Ang mga Iraya Mangyan nasa bundok ay sila ay lumikas dahilan sa kinukunan ng mga Tagalog. Kanilang kinukuha lupa. Kung minsan ay pinagbibili nila ng mga isang balding bagoong, mga isang bulok, nagisubo, yun ay pinapalit ng kanang lupa. Hindi utay-utay na sila ay pataas na.
With people leaving their villages to find other ways of making a living, the entire community has been destroyed.
Okay.
Having developed its own language and distinctive culture, the Iraya Mangyan tribe is the pride of the Mangyans. As their land is taken away from them, the language and traditional songs of the Iraya Mangyan tribe risk vanishing in the next century.
Kung ano man ang kanilang nais, halimbawa, gusto nilang i-promote ang kanilang lugar, magpayagan nila at pahintulutan na pumunta dito ang mga turista, ay yun ang aming gagawin. Pagka sila'y lumapit sa amin at nagsabi na sila nga ganun nga kanilang kagustuhan.
As a top tourist attraction in Mindoro, White Beach is a beautiful place in Puerto Galera, and an increasing number of Iraya Mangyan tribal people are living here. After losing their lands near Mount Halcon, the Iraya Mangyan tribe, who once lived in the coastal regions, are returning to them now. But without owning any land here, they face a mountain of hardships. The men say that working on construction sites as day laborers is better than living in the mountains, where they do not own any of the farmland. Albert, an Iraya Mangyan and day laborer, also echoes this sentiment.
Mababa lang, 200.
Pero okay lang naman po, makakain-kain din po naman kayo doon.
Minsan may kapos pa rin. Marami pang kailangan.
Pati yung anak nyo rin po kasi 4 na.
Nag-aaral na isang anak ko.
The Mangyan live in poverty, so even their children work by collecting bottles instead of going to school. The Iraya Mangyan tribe was once the pride of Mindoro.
Ito dahil kasi dito, kaya hindi ka muna pumasok?
Opo. Tatay ko po.
But their future does not look bright today, as Mangyan children scavenge the beaches for recyclable material. Mount Halcon, a symbol of Mindoro, is revered as a holy mountain by the Iraya Mangyan tribe. Seven Mangyan tribes, who are the indigenous people of Mindoro, live around Mount Halcon. The Mangyan tribe was forced to leave their coastal villages by Spanish settlers. Though forced to live in the jungle, the natural resources around Mount Halcon provided them with the means to survive and preserve their culture. But they face a crisis today and have nowhere to go if they are evicted from these